past Friday, I found in my mailbox in the office an article that appeared in the Magnificat from 2002. And it's entitled "To Quell the Terror." It's about 16 Carmelite nuns who, during the Reign of Terror in France, when the Catholic Church was under great persecution, how they gave their lives for Christ. It's a historical account. I was so moved by the article that I ordered the book. Of course, I had to order 2 more books in order to get the free shipping, but that's a story for another day. But anyways, this is what struck me. I had never heard of this. I knew of the Reign of Terror from history classes and things of that nature, but I didn't know about these 16 Carmelite nuns. During the time of the Reign of Terror, for about 6 months up until their martyrdom, they would recite a daily prayer asking God to make them martyrs so that peace could come to their country. And this is something that they did every single day. And on July 17th, 1794, they were taken to the guillotine. And this is the part that struck me, and if you don't mind, I'm going to just read this small paragraph for you. It goes, "On the day of their martyrdom, the prioress, Mother Teresa of St. Augustine, stood at the foot of the scaffold. Before climbing the steps, each sister interrupted her singing of Laudate Dominum to ask Mother Teresa permission to die, Mother. Mother Teresa responded to each one, 'Go, my daughter.' In front of a violent power, the sisters made it clear who had true authority over their life and death. Jesus Christ, who himself said, 'No one takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own free will.'" The point I kind of want to make this morning is this idea of martyrdom. I'm not asking us to literally become martyrs, but to reflect on the gift of martyrdom. That is the spiritual gift of martyrdom that we are invited to enter into, especially with the readings today. The story of the cross, there's so many things that we can gather from God's wisdom in the story of the cross, but one of the things is that we see in the story of the cross is how God brings good out of the suffering of humanity. The death and suffering of Christ is that example of the suffering of humanity. The resurrection is that gift of the goodness coming from that. And the readings today invite us to take our own personal suffering, give it to Christ, so that he can bring good out of it. The first reading from Job, Job really speaks for almost every human being who's experienced hardship, difficulty, or any form of suffering. When we hear him lament today, we can all, to some degree, on some level, understand what he is going through. St. Paul felt it, as we heard in the second reading, the day that he was thrown off his horse and was blind for 3 days and felt the guilt and shame of all that he had done in persecuting Christ and having Christians arrested and put to death. He carries that with him, and we hear that in the second reading by the end of the story, how he's surrendered himself to that and allowing Christ to bring good out of the suffering that he himself caused. In the gospel story today, all those people who come to Jesus to be healed, I'm sure they felt in one time or another, like Job did in the first reading, expressing in some way those same words. But in today's gospel story, what Mark gives us is they are coming to him filled with joy and hope. This is the first time Jesus comes to Capernaum. And by the time he gets there, they start to know who he is. They start to see and understand. He speaks with such great authority. He drives out demons. He performs miracles. This has to be the one that we're waiting for. This has to be the Messiah. And so their faith has grown to the point where they are waiting at the door to encounter him. They run to see him, filled with this joy, filled with this hope, because they want to encounter Jesus Christ. And so they give him, when they come and they give him what it is that ails them. They give him their suffering. And what ends up happening is for us today, when we hear their story that happened 2,000 years ago, their story should be an inspiration to us. That their suffering they give to Christ now becomes a story of inspiration and encouragement for us to do the same. Because this is what happens when we give ourselves to Christ. Not only does he heal the brokenhearted, as we prayed in the psalm, but he also uses us to be a light or a lamppost, if you will, for others who are experiencing the same thing. They can see through us by the way in which we respond to our own suffering with the gift and graces of faith. And that becomes a source of inspiration and encouragement to others. And so as we gather around our Lord's table today, perhaps the thing that we can pray for, there's that song, What the World Needs Now is, what is it, love, sweet love? How about what the world needs now is more martyrs, more people willing to give of themselves for Christ, more people willing to give of themselves and allowing God to use whatever it is that they have and experienced for the greater good, for the salvation of others. Today we are invited to give ourselves to Christ so that he can bring about good through each one of us.